All right, here we are. We are going live on some channels, live on all channels. Okay, here we are, ready to go. Look at that. Hurried my ass off and got us an extra 2 minutes. Thanks everyone for your patience. Projection still something I'm getting used to. It takes quite a bit of time to do a minutes and points projection for all 270 odd players playing on today's slate, but here we are ready to go. Going to attempt to, again, try to briefly discuss all the games, the most important news for the first, hopefully, 20 minutes or so, and then get into the plays and stuff. Well, I was hoping to be about 15 minutes early today because we have a proper, well, there's like 19 teams playing tonight, but 5 of them are playing non-NBA teams and aren't on the slate, thankfully, I guess, for this. We can be grateful, and has slightly lowered the chance of me having an aneurysm. But yeah, Hartenstein. We'll talk about that in another day or two. As far as looking at the slate, sort of heuristically, 2 things stand out to me. One, there has been much more uncertainty than we intended early in the preseason. As these games get later in the night, there are obviously more questions that are going to be answered as we get closer to lock. So I would not blame anyone who was inclined to try to be a little heavier on the early games. As far as the value of the games, you know, the final game between Golden State and Sacramento, I think, is hypothetically the fastest with about a 227, 228 over-under. But most of the others are high teens to low 20s. Only really the Detroit and San Antonio game is a full-out stink bomb for us there. Are we playing the Leaf game? No, but I greatly enjoyed the TJ Leaf game. Thank you for those of you who are good enough to indulge me last night in that particular experience. So let's get in here and get started talking about these games. Just sort of from a brief overall, we have Miami at Washington. For Miami, Waiters is still out, obviously. Adebayo is going to stay out. I haven't seen news on Jarek Jones Jr., though I don't expect him to play. Ellington is out. So Waiters out, Ellington out, Adebayo out, airplane mode. Derek Jones Jr. is going to be out. J. Rich is questionable. I think it's 60-40 that he plays. Spolstra said before the game that he was going to test it out, and unless he felt 100% wasn't going to go. But based on all the other comments, he seemed likely to go, and that's probably the best attitude. So J. Rich may play. Not a huge amount of relevance to that. He himself is not that much player, and none of the wings at this point, I think, are particularly wonderful targets. And if he plays, I think I had him at around 18 minutes. If you were looking at the projections, they were with the assumption that he would play, which I think is slightly more likely. Obviously, Hassan Whiteside is the target on this team now for most everyone. There's little reason to move off him here other than the fact he's Hassan Whiteside. We've spoken extensively about his history of frenetic production. But he seems to be on the same page there. And again, probably Olynyk going to start next to him again, though I haven't seen that confirmed yet. Certainly Adebayo is still out. That also portends well for him, so it's hard not to think he's not in a pretty good place. He played 27 minutes last game. That's the exact same thing I would have him projected for tonight. He'd be the first guy we'd look at. Kelly Olynyk, certainly fine in tournaments. Does have a... well, we like KD for a lot of reasons, and playing in Seattle is the cute one, and you'd think that's a little extra fun narrative for him. But Kellyo certainly makes some interesting fun as a tournament play there. The paucity of guards, I think you see the minutes still starting to creep up on Dragic, but not really the match. I want to take the GPP shot at him again there. Tyler Johnson won't play. Sorry, I know I forgot to mention something. Tyler Johnson isn't going to play. That, you know, moves Dragic as a GPP play into the realm of consideration, but still not priced quite where I'd like to do it. I imagine Briante Weber is the minimum on some sites. He probably now cracks 20, 22 minutes. It seems like on DraftKings there are simply better plays to do. And Weber not a huge fantasy contributor. And on FanDuel, there's just a lot of other really dumb minimum price plays. So we'll get to those in a bit. Rivers, Oubre, and Jeff Green, strong and solid picks. I don't think I necessarily want to play any of those guys. That's a nice segue into the Washington game for me there, though. Thank you very much. Scott Brooks came out and said that the starters will play around 20 or more minutes, was the quote I saw, which I hope was the reporter approximating poorly and the not Scott Brooks speaking in ways that don't make sense, but around 20 or more minutes. Even if all the starters go up to 20 minutes, Oubre is going to lose time. Certainly Austin Rivers is going to lose time. That makes that entire team a little bit less sexy, and even at places where their prices may have declined, I've checked the pricing today, but I need to more specifically look at it, it makes it hard to go for a lot of those bench guys. I have basically, of the guys you just mentioned, Oubre and Rivers sitting around 20. I think Jeff Green actually falls off a little more to even 15. So with a slate as big as we have tonight, I'm probably disinclined towards any of those three players in a cash format ever. In tournaments, all this is aside, assuming they're not stupidly like minimum price on FanDuel, like say Skal Labissiere, who's pretty phenomenal at 3,500, especially since they're on a back-to-back, and he's the only one who didn't play minutes yesterday. Minutes projection for Satoransky, I think I had 17 now. 15 now. I brought him down there as well. So all the bench guys are going to lose some minutes. Now, that was with me still projecting minutes to come out for Jordan McRae and Chesson Randall still getting 7 minutes. I have them each at. If they don't get those, then maybe if they also tighten the rotation in addition to adding minutes to the starters, then you can see some of these bench guys still continuing to maintain the time. Oubre played 27 last game. That's not going to happen when the starters play an average of 21 instead of an average of 14, but he might still play 23 or 24. And of the three players you mentioned, of the four bench players we've mentioned on the Wizards, that would be the first one I would look at would be Kelly Oubre, who still has a tournament upside. Of the starters, based on the prices I remember off my head, I would probably try a tournament play on Markieff, who got ejected last game, or Jan Mahinmi, who has monthly dumb games where he gets some total 7 combined steals and blocks, which can be kind of cute when it works out. In tournaments, I'd look at one of those guys, but definitely on a whole, not a ton of interest on Washington as a team. Let's move on. Actually, highest over-under of the day, I apologize, is apparently New Orleans, New York on my list here. That is one higher, which is unsurprising. Definitely a game we're interested in targeting. New Orleans is playing at a completely ridiculous pace, and the Knicks, even more so than every team in the preseason, not playing a ton of defense. Any love for Wall? 20 minutes projection? I don't mind sharing that one. I have Wall 21 minutes and 30.7 fantasy points. I will burn through this, and I have a couple people who are being nice enough to take notes and send me some pricing things to share, and I appreciate their facilitation of me having more time to do the other things I have to do. I doubt he is priced advantageously enough for 30 points to matter, but it's definitely approaching the realm of possibility there. Moutier minutes since he's starting. I actually didn't see Moutier starting news, so look at that. That's news for me. I would assume he would get up into the range that Trey Burke has been seeing, which is still pretty unimpressive at 20 to 21, I would think is the case. Maybe even that comes down a little bit because they still, I presume, will play Trey Burke off the bench, although that's not necessarily guaranteed. And obviously, Alonzo Trier went off last game and it spends time at both guard positions. You heard from Rod Drummond may sit. There were comments specifically from Dwayne Casey indicating he would not. Now, these comments were after the last game, I think, but Dwayne Casey came out, and I read all the interview transcripts from the head coaches this past couple of days, and the one from Dwayne Casey said, someone asked him about Drummond playing 34 minutes somewhat unexpectedly, and he said something to the effect of, I'm paraphrasing, I expect, he's got to do this, and he's got to play those minutes and be able to get up again and go on Friday and be able to get up again and go on Monday. So I do think that there's, some chance he sits based on the fact that they sat Blake, and that seemed to be prep. There was a report out that Blake was less likely to play than to play based on the fact that he had a big workout yesterday, and there's been repeated mentions that he may not work out, but he was actually going hard. Actually, this morning, I think it was a shoot-around, and some people suggested that the intensity of his workout was noticeably more than the other Pistons present, and for that reason, he quite possibly wasn't going to play. That seems a reasonable place. Comment there, they played 20 to 24 minutes in Game 2 last year. I think they get over 20. I have them all slightly over 20. I looked that up too, and I agree. I have the starters for the Wizards at 21, 22, 22, 23, And I have 20 for Jan Mahinmi. But, and yeah, someone just posted that he will need to rev up on Friday. Yeah, that's the quote that I took out of the chatter there. Gina Menzel, who is the beat reporter who correctly reported Igor Kokoskov's incorrect reports on how many minutes he was going to play at starter, says, "This is not directed at this specific user, but after people personally attacked me and other media on Monday, Igor said the starters would play 15 minutes and Aiden Jackson played about 30. I'm not exactly eager to cater to the DFS crowd." Okay, so anyway, the anti-Rod Beard there. Don't get me wrong, be angry at the people, not a whole crowd. Whenever you say something like all Republicans or all black people or all DFS users, you're probably wrong and probably sound like an idiot. So she should know better. Just my 2 cents there. But I'm sympathetic if someone was like, oh, fuck it. Like, I very intentionally, courteously asked her, hey, I'm curious what went wrong here. And she said, I don't know. This is what he said. 3 of us saw it. And I went, okay, thanks very much for your time, and moved on with my day. But I'm sympathetic for her getting shit on, and some DFS players have been very rude to members of the media in the past. So still, she should differentiate those two people, not ignore one of the reasons people are watching the games and that she has a job. But moving on, that was talking about the Wizards. So yeah, we have a fair amount of interest here in both Knicks and of course Pelicans. Pels, the news for them is, of course, Randall is doubtful, which basically means out in the preseason. I can't remember the last time I saw a doubtful to playing in the preseason. Mirotic is probable. I do think he plays, especially with Randall out. If we get news that Mirotic isn't playing, certainly give me a heads up, because that would change news quickly. Jay Rich is out. Okay, doing the 5-second version. He was, I gave him 15 or 16 minutes in the projections, I think. You can now add a couple minutes to the other wings. Justice Winslow picks up 2 minutes. Goran Dragic may pick up a minute or two, because Josh occasionally plays some, nominal point guard. And it's basically a neutral move for everyone else on the Heat, but the minutes will get spread out between those guys. Thank you for the update on the news. Do you have Knox over Ubra in prediction? I do, and I like Kevin Knox because, again, what you're looking for, guys, like it's pace up the yazoo. He's a guy who was shown us he had upside repeatedly before shitting himself a little bit. And not shitting himself. He had 22 fantasy points, I think, but burnt a lot of people at 30-40% ownership on the last day. And again, it's like almost the best matchup possible. Certainly a hell of a lot of pace. So I like Kevin Knox quite a bit in tournaments. I would have no objection there. Guys, just lock in Alonzo Trier. I would have concern if I was locking in Alonzo Trier, who, again, I think DK is 4,800. Certainly showed the upside there. That A, one game does not a projection make. B, while possessing all the tools, if they decide to play Trey Burke off the bench, maybe he gets more minutes than, say, Moutier was getting off the bench. And, Trier loses some of that time. I don't know if we have specific news on Courtney Lee, but if Courtney Lee got back in the rotation, it could get a little bit sticky. So if someone gets a Courtney Lee projection, I would be a little happier with that. Anthony Davis, I do expect his minutes to slowly but steadily increase as we get into there. I think I bumped him all the way up to, I want to say, 19 minutes in these projections. Let me see if I can find it. I spent some time looking through it specifically for this. 19 minutes for him, which is pretty massive. Teams to target real quick. Golden State, Sacramento, Minnesota, New York, New Orleans, Oklahoma City. I suppose off the top of my head would be the teams I would immediately say, let's target those teams. Something Vonla or Vonla. What Vonla? Robinson is out. Thoughts on Hicks or Vonla? I imagine the minutes for the bigs are the next, and this is a good way to look. If Mitchell Robinson doesn't play, and I was just told Mitchell Robinson will not play, so again, those with rotations adjust them because I won't have time to repeatedly change them every minute or two as we get into these games. Yeah, they've got to throw some minutes now at some of the other bigs on this team. So, trying to remember the last rotation, see how they go. They'll run small a little bit more, so you'll actually end up with some minutes indirectly landing on guys like Mario Hezonja, who I don't think is really cheap enough on DK at least to throw a bullet at, but Kevin Knox, will get some time at the 4 now. Noah Vonla, I don't think is good enough to play. He's an excellent rebounder, but still, given that pretty lame DFS quantity, So I don't think I'd be looking at the other guys there, but it does make me, you know, with that minutes and usage gone, like certainly the bench guys, especially a little more. I wouldn't completely sleep on Courtney Lee is out. Okay, that's good news too. So yeah, I wouldn't completely sleep on any of the wings here. I would still rather play Trey Burke than Emmanuel Mudiay. He's a better fantasy quantity, and off the bench probably helps him. All of this ends up being good news for Tim Hardaway Jr. I only projected him for 24 minutes. I might bump that up a little bit now. We're just guessing whether or not Fizdale throws them extra minutes to the starters or to the backups. But again, in the preseason especially, Fizdale has been a bit of a bitch. So let's just continue on there. Top 5 most owned players tonight, any position. Again, this is very site dependent. On DraftKings, it's probably DeAndre Ayton, Durant. Clay is going to carry some particularly high ownership too. I don't know. After that, I've got to do a better review of prices, but good conversation. We should get into that. Knicks are starting Mudiay because they think he's pressing on the second unit because they suck and want to. I can't tell. That's paraphrasing, but okay. Want to. Okay. Like it's if Mudiay is the minimum, guys who are priced the minimum, you know, are a little compelling whenever we expect them to get any sort of reasonable time. So is it possible against New Orleans that you know, Mudiay picks up 22 fantasy points in 17 minutes? No, it's not, you know, impossible at all. He's 3,800 on FanDuel. Let's see, on DK, I imagine he's 4,000. Nice, 4,600 at that point. I think he played Trier, but let's get back on track so we can handle some message. Strong pivots off Golden State families such as Clay and Durant in a DK GPP. I'm not quite sure I answered, but again, I'm going to stay off the questions for a second here. So, Frank Jackson should return. Was great in the first game. Second game, twisted his ankle after 6 minutes, I think it was. But next we talked about... they will probably just dearth the minutes, and you will see more minutes for Ronnie Baker and Kadeem Allen and Noah Vonleh, who was only playing 6 or 7, now probably plays 11 or 12. But if, you know, I fired a shot on this team, it's probably Knox, Trier, Hardaway, Burke, Cantor. Certainly, you know, has established that given enough time, can do some extremely good damage, and price dependent, there would be a lot of merit to that. Let's go ahead and talk about Atlanta and Memphis. Taurean Prince is out. I believe Tyler Dorsey will get the start. I had someone confirm that and then say that it was still up in the air, but it sort of ends up being irrelevant. You're going to have 3 guys to look at in GPPs in the wings there that get a little bit of a boost close to the minimum price with no Prince, and those would be Dorsey, Bembry, and Reuter. Bembry is probably still my favorite, but I think he might be a little more popular than Dorsey coming off a big game, so I like them about equally as much. Daniel Hamilton is still out, which keeps that open a little bit. Dwayne Dedmon is still out. You know, there's a chance Bazemore gets appreciable time. I mean, he played, I want to say, 18 minutes last game. I think you can guess now that comes up to 20 or 21, and the usage comes a little bit, should still start. So without Prince, he's in the realm of a GPP play, but certainly, again, Kent Bazemore has always been an inconsistent quantity. You know, we got I want to... So there's, we were pretty disappointed in Alex Len in that last game. Obviously, he didn't get anywhere near the amount of minutes we would like, and if he catches the start again, you know, Marc Gasol isn't the most fun thing in the world. So I still like Trae Young quite a bit. The price is still up there, but I have him still with a reasonable projection. He's just going to shoot a metric ton this year. You know, not having Taurean Prince, he ends up being sort of the clear offensive leader in the first unit. I know Merle Haggard. Kidding me? Dukes of Hazzard. No. So Trae Young, I still think is a strong tournament play. He has a very real... I mean, last game I liked him a lot, and he was 5,300, and that price has come up, but he shot 5 for 14 from the field and was still very, very good. One of these days he'll make half his shots, or he'll make 5 3-pointers. He's a really good assist guy. He's going to get you 8 or 10 assists. And again, if you get Taurean Prince out of there, he's going to be even more responsible for action there. So for the Hawks, I like Trae Young. I like John Collins, of course. Always foul trouble concerns. but I think his minutes come up into the low to mid 20s at least. We talked about Bembry and Dorsey. Past that, I guess we'll move on at this point. Memphis, Bickerstaff said in a not widely reported quote that Friday nights we want to ramp up our guys. They're on a back-to-back. They play tonight and tomorrow night. Tomorrow night they play the Pacers. Kyle Anderson will not play tonight, which is good if we're looking at other guys. Yuta Watanabe will play. But Bickerstaff said Friday night we want to ramp up our guys' minutes. We only had a few guys play into the 20s last game, which was on Tuesday. So we'll have some more guys get a little bit higher minutes. The second night, guys are still going to play, but we'll cut their minutes back some. So I think it's a little more likely. Again, I don't really want anyone on this Memphis team, but the quick read would be it seems likely that some of the starters on some of these guys get their minutes creeping up. So, like, I have Conley and Gasol playing 24. I have JaMychal Green playing 22. I have Jaren Jackson Jr. playing 22. Of those guys at their prices, probably Jaren Jackson Jr., who can do blocks and threes and all sorts of upside shit, would be the guy I would be most inclined to take a shot at. But Avon Robb is going to be back, and is Whiteside a lock? No, there's a lot of good centers, and the prices come up a little bit. He's certainly fine to play. You know, this is a fine matchup with a pretty woeful defensive unit in Atlanta, and that's with Taurean Prince in, who's, you know, one of their better defenders. With him out of there, it should be pretty damn ugly. So, you know, if I'm building 10 lineups, I maybe have a Marc Gasol and a Mike Conley and a Jaren Jackson Jr. But again, the caution there is Marshawn Brooks, who did not play in the last game, is expected to play, and Avon Robb is expected to play. So we like Kyle Anderson being out, but a couple guys are going to come and basically make that minute neutral there. Next game, Oklahoma City and Minnesota. This is pretty exciting. The last game on Wednesday had Dennis Schroeder, Turd Ferguson, Timothy Luwawu-Cabarrot, Pat, and Steven Adams start. For tonight's game, PG-13 is back, which is pretty appealing for me. I wanted to find a way to get some exposure there. I have a pretty healthy projection for him, and I like the matchup a lot with Minnesota. So I like Paul George a lot. I like Schroeder less than I did last game, where he was the fairly rare 100% lock guy. He's not 100% lock for me at this point. The slate is much larger. Paul George is there. That's enough to make him still just a really strong play. I believe FanDuel did not raise his price, I was told, which I have a feeling means it's at a fairly stupid level. Let me head on over there real quick, and yeah, 5,300 at point guard on FanDuel is still pretty enjoyable. And again, he last game we threw the 100% lock on him, and he scored about 40 fantasy points and shot like shit. So yeah, if you're playing on FanDuel, you almost definitely have to go there. I believe DK, I saw him closer to 67 or something in that range. 77. So you know, I might look for that exposure on FanDuel. Have you touched on Moutier starting? Yes, I discussed Moutier starting quite a bit. I think it now makes him sort of playable in a GPP at a minimum price, but you're still dealing with Burke. I expect to still get minutes, and Alonzo Trier played 27 last game and looked pretty good. Courtney Lee is still out, so it's still doable for me, and the matchup is obviously pristine against Narlands, but I'm not super excited. Tournaments only, knock yourself out. No reason to play a guy like Ish Smith tonight. Ish is very rarely an upside basketball player, and he's playing in a dog shit game, really the only bad game on the night. What about Elfin Holiday? Yeah, I like Elfin Holiday quite a bit. I think Holiday picks up a couple more minutes. It's still tough for him at his price. They obviously were really restrictive with his minutes before. I think it comes up a bit. I would probably rather play Elf between the two of them at their prices. Elf can eat tonight. Elf is, and again, along with Brooke Lopez, I've been called the Alfred Payton Whisperer. In tournaments, I could certainly see playing Alfred Payton at 6,300 instead of playing, Dennis Schroeder at 7,700, we were just talking about. That makes a fair amount of sense to me. We'll get to Quinn Cook in a bit, but there is, to my knowledge, no specific information about Gentry giving minutes to New Orleans. I am attempting to search and check my updates as stuff is coming in. Elf projection. I don't think I have a reason to change it. When I did it before today, I had 24 minutes and 25.1 fantasy points. I still feel like that's a pretty good number. I like Quinn Cook as a value guy at 4,300 without Steph. I expect him to start, and I expect the minutes to come up. 4,300 on DK against a pretty poor Sacramento team is appealing for me. So anyhow, yeah, looking at Oklahoma City, I would still play. They ran straight position splits at a few spots. You had Pat start, Jeremy Grant get the backup. That was all 48 minutes at power forward. You had Steven Adams start, Nerlens Noel get the backup. That was all 48 minutes at center. I still have some interest in Nerlens Noel. He wasn't thrilling last game, gave you basically 20, but he's the same price, and somewhere around my 10th lineup I would find a hair of exposure for him. Starters, it is Dorsey. Young, Dorsey, Bazemore, Collins, and Len. That's about what we expected. Nice job searching the Twitter. Favorite GPP shooting guard. Thoughts on Hazonia on FanDuel? I got to check his price. If you have answer a question like that and pull me off topic, do throw in the price if you could. At $6,000, I have less than interest. I have no interest in playing $6,000 versus like I'll pay $5,100 for Kevin Knox if I'm going to do that. Let's go back to notes. Best thing to do for me is less notes, more questions, because it tends to bring up anything that I missed and people ask about players. I don't know. Minnesota does what Minnesota does. I really like Karl Anthony Towns. Karl Anthony Towns has always stepped up pretty big against Golden State. Off the top of my head, his last couple games against Golden State, he had, I don't know, I think it was like 54 and 58 fantasy points, give or take a couple on either score. Now, that was with him playing 36 minutes. Tonight he's going to play 26 minutes. But especially with how poor he's been, frankly, the first couple games, I still have a good bit of interest in him. I think the other starters are certainly interesting in tournaments. Derrick Rose makes a very appealing value play, again, especially on point guard, where I think, or on point guard, on FanDuel, where I think someone told me he was $3,900. Yeah, that's pretty appealing there. So yeah, yeah. OKC. Sorry, I'm getting my Karl Anthony Towns isn't playing Golden State. Sorry, I got my projections swapped around in my head there. Minnesota's playing Oklahoma City. Lots of games, and when you throw the Aussie teams in there, I get a headache real quick. Anyhow, Wiggins is, again, a guy without much of a GPP upside. I don't think I want to go there. Teague makes a lot of sense. He's going to see more of guys who are pretty poor defensively, as in Schroeder and Felton and other guys who are not going to be able to steep him out of there. He would probably be my next favorite guy to play in a GPP. You can still Tyus Jones, but price is still a little higher than I'd like to be, around 4,000. It's kind of exciting when he gets towards 5,000. Little likely he gets there. I, when doing the Minnesota lineup tonight, broke it down to 10 guys and had them all getting between 20 and 26 minutes. I think they drop the spare guys out of the rotation tonight based on a couple comments. So I think CJ Williams had been getting a couple minutes, and Nunnally found his way into the last game. I think you may get no minutes for Williams and Nunnally and Deng, and that could possibly lead to the the starters and the bench guys running the pure 10-man rotation again, which is obviously ideal for playing any of those guys. Thoughts on Miro with Randall out? I'm presuming, I haven't seen 100% from Randall is out, but he's doubtful, so he's going to be out. I'm concerned with the amount of time that Mirotic gets coming back off injury, and the price isn't so nominal that I'm thrilled with it, but I think it's worth certainly tournament upside. Trier versus Magruder thoughts? Probably Magruder I like a little more in cash, but Trier is a better just points per value play. Jaren Jackson, Kellyo, or Ubra for cash on DK. Kellyo, presuming we get starting news. The thought on the Pels is that generally normally plays his guys a lot in the preseason, the first few games, and then they started on bump. Yeah, I am ambitious that the Pelicans pick up some more time, and I had them all projected to pick up 2 or 3 minutes off the last game. Magruder minutes, probably 24, 25 now. Maybe 26 with Johnson out. I'd have to look at that rotation real quick. Thoughts on Shaq Harrison with the Kobo starting? I have no interest. I didn't have much interest on Shaq Harrison starting when he was getting 24 minutes. Now off the bench, and with the news that Isaiah Cannon is going to enter the point guard trio there. Again, this is a team that runs a lot of guards. They have kind of 2.5, 3 guards running at all times out there. I still think Shaq Harrison, I think I brought his minutes down to 15 or 16. So it would be no Shaq Harrison for me. Really don't want any of those guys. I like some of them as basketball players, but Melton got time in the last game too. So now you're looking at Cannon and Melton and Harrison, and it's just and Okobo. That's just a lot of guys playing point guard on one team to try to take a shot on a big-ass slate. If you wanted me to pick one, I'd probably take Okobo because he's getting the start, but I don't think it's the best possible play you could have. You think AD playing 32 minutes is viable? Like, very viable. No, 32 would shock me, and again, I kept his projection at 19 or 20, but I like him with his projection at 19 or 20 with, again, a lot of value, and I would certainly agree there is an upside to be achieved on the back end of that value. Wade 3,900 on FanDuel. Yeah, you can certainly do it, and the continuing injuries to the wings and J. Rich being out makes, it about the last day you would want to take a shot at that, but Dwayne Wade at 3,900 I like quite a bit. Let's move on to the shit game of the day for a little bit here. Detroit and San Antonio again, 205 over under. I gave you the thing on Detroit for. I think it's 60-40 Blake Griffin doesn't play. I'd like to see news. Again, that is, I think we're down to an 8:30 game now if I'm getting this right. So probably won't have it before lock. But I don't think Blake plays. I don't think Reggie Jackson plays. That opens up, a couple of guys that I think we can look at as being, somewhat interesting. I have Andre Drummond down for 26 minutes right now. There is some chance he doesn't play, and we say this simply because, they rested Blake the first game with no. Now, Blake is older than Andre by 6 years or some number of years. Not quite, but he's older than Andre. Andre's always been good in the preseason. The coach did give his comments after the last game that he's got to be able to get up for Friday and get up for the game on Monday. So I expect him to play. I would be surprised if they, ran him out minutes into the 30s again. But it's not impossible that he goes just absolute beast mode again. So a compelling tournament play. Really not that bad of a cash play just because he's going to rebound a metric butt ton. But again, it's a slow game. The last game the Pistons played was 97-91. This game has lowest over-under of the evening. So, I'm not, doing everything I can to get Andre in there. I have him at 26 minutes. I think he plays. But Whiteside or Drummond, I would play probably Whiteside in a tournament. I'd probably play Whiteside in cash or in a tournament at this point. Someone's saying average. He averaged 34 last season. Weird. I'm not sure who you're referring to. Is AD too expensive on FanDuel? No, because it's about putting out. First of all, if we think there's a chance, and I would be surprised if he played more than 24 minutes. But if you think there's any chance that he plays 26 or 28 minutes, then God no, you could get 65 out of him or some absolutely insane number. This is a guy who scored north of 90 a couple times last year. If he was playing 32 minutes, he could score 75. So if you think that's any sort of real possibility, which some people apparently do, you should keep that in mind in your calculus. But no, on FanDuel where you can play minimum price Scalabissiere and Emmanuel Mudiay and Derrick Rose, and I'm trying to think of some of the other guys who are just woefully underpriced, then no, you got to spend that money somewhere. Are the Suns in play again? Well, the Suns we're most interested in are going to be Josh Jackson and DeAndre Ayton, who I expect to be pretty popular. Tonight's starters for the Heat versus the Wizards: Dragic, Magruder, Winslow, Olynyk, and Whiteside. That is what I projected. There was a little interest on who exactly was going to move to the bench out of the starters from last game. They're going to keep Winslow in there. Who do we pair Ayton with on FanDuel if not AD? Wait, are you telling me Ayton? Ayton's a power forward. I guess he played there in college. If I didn't play AD, I'd probably play Scalabissiere. So the Kings are on a back-to-back. We'll get to them in a minute. But on a back-to-back, he is minimum price there. They don't have more than 12 healthy dudes. And all the other bigs played, Bagley played 31 minutes last night. The other bigs played 22, 24, 26. Scalabissiere, almost impressively, managed to foul out in 12 minutes. I like Scala a lot at 3,500. FD positioning is garbage. It is unrefined. One of the reasons I was less critical about their move today with their scoring in the regular season going forward, which we'll record a video on later, was the fact that they're trying something. I give them credit for trying something. My criticism of their preseason prices is, really, we're not adjusting Derrick Rose and Dennis Schroeder and some of these other guys? Do something. I don't have a problem if you suck, but suck attempt and fail. Don't just be like, fuck it, it's preseason. We'll just throw it up there and not pay any attention to it. Pretty annoying. Beal at point guard. Yeah, I don't get Beal at point guard. There's no rationale behind that. I don't know why you think he doesn't get over 24, FastEddieFear. Like, he was 2 for 4 last year over 30. Because he's played 2 games this year, and he's played 15 and 17. So that's a big jump to just go from game X to game X plus 1. I wouldn't fall out of my chair if he played 30 minutes tonight, but that's an awfully quick time to double up the minutes. And as he is getting a little bit older, and it's not like they don't know who Anthony Davis is, I think it's a little less likely he gets worked quite that hard in the preseason. And again, Gentry's preseason usage the first couple games hasn't been really emblematic of how it was last year, so taking that all into account, I think a reasonable projection would be in the low 20s. You're only seeing 2 games on FanDuel, or are you missing something? You're looking at the regular season opening slate where they have their $1 million tournament. On the left, on one of the bars, you have to select preseason. Let's continue on. Is Lonnie Walker playing? I don't know, but we'll use this real quickly to segue to San Antonio. It's cute to play the Spurs, but this is, again, just like literally doing the projection for this team makes me want to rip my skin off. You know, they played 18 guys last game. Starters played 12, 14, 16, 17 minutes. I do think that comes up a little bit. If you forced me to play someone on the Spurs, I would play DeJounte Murray or LaMarcus Aldridge before I played DeRozan, who people keep asking me about, and I keep giving the same answer to. So, like, I don't care if Lonnie Walker plays. You could talk me into Pau Gasol if he was ridiculously cheap. Those of you who attended some of the FanBase universities will recall the Pau Gasol, Andre Drummond conversations. I will get to specific questions in a minute. Is Jeremy Lin playing? Yes, and I don't mind Jeremy Lin in tournaments. He's supposed to actually finally get some time next to Trae Young. Lloyd Pierce came out and said, he said for the entire preseason, I want those 2 guys to play next to each other once in a while. First preseason game they did not. Jeremy Lin acted specifically only in relief of Trae Young. That will swap around a little bit. So yeah, I'm going to save time and just say I don't think playing a Spur is a great idea. It's hard to project anyone for 20 minutes, and it's the slowest game of the night, and you have to get lucky and get the 20-minute guy, and it's just, I don't want it. Portland and Phoenix. Mo Harkless is still out for Portland. Portland was similarly awful in their first preseason game. They played 17 guys. I think the highest guy they got was 20 minutes. You have to really want it to play somebody on Portland. Nobody was good. If you made me play someone on Portland, I would play Yusuf Nurkic, who could, smack around DeAndre Ayton pretty quickly if he needed to. So is it worth it? Yusuf Nurkic would be probably the only guy on Portland I would throw out there. I have no reason to think they're not going to play 17 or 18 guys tonight. We got 12 out of McCollum and Lillard last time. If I'm not seeing news yet that they're going to... Yeah. So Phoenix, again, Cannon will play. Booker is still out. The point guard thing is still a mess, but apparently we can expect some sort of reasonable time still out of Josh Jackson and DeAndre Ayton. I reduced them slightly, but it seems like they're fairly likely to still pick up minutes in the range of the 30s. Ayton is probably too cheap on both sides based on how dominant he's been in the preseason, even if one of those games did come against New Zealand, if I'm getting that correctly. So, yeah, he's going to be very popular. I am more confident in him continuing his streak than I was in Knox and Miles Bridges, both of whom I sort of talked down a little bit in their last game because people were like, oh, you got to play 100%. This guy's amazing. I'm like, those guys are not Michael Jordan yet. They've been good for 2 games. At their age and with what they're doing, it's much more likely they come down than stay there going forward, and that happened. It's also likely Ayton doesn't continue to produce 1.5 fantasy points a minute. But he's cheap enough that I feel a little better about that. Positioned at the bigs, there's just, rebound block. It's your floor is much more safe. So, yeah, you can basically play Ayton in anything you want to, but he's going to be pretty popular there. Last game, I think, is Sacramento and Golden State. Again, back-to-back for Sacramento. They played last night. Harry Giles made us all lots of money. That worked out fairly well. Buddy Hield looked okay, but you're still going to have... I think Yogi Ferrell is still questionable. Bogdan is out again. Bielitsa is out again. Shumpert is out again. Kufis is out again. So again, they're going to be pretty tight. My favorite player on that team is probably Skal Labissiere, who can do tournament upside things. You like his matchup a little more when you have no Draymond out there and a couple other things. So, yeah, I like Skal a lot, especially on FanDuel where he's the minimum. You have to think he starts, and hopefully Jaeger's paying attention, is a little more comfortable giving him minutes. But literally, they're dressing like 13 guys. Oklahoma City reports Schroeder, Ferguson, George, Patterson, and Adams starting tonight. That's same as last time. Donovan says he'll make decisions on minutes in the third quarter and will have an eye on Abrinas coming off back spasms. Okay, you didn't want to play Abrinas anyway, and you know a lot of the wings are going to lose some minutes anyway to throw some into George. Those aren't the same starters as the last game. It's the same starters with George and Luau Cabarro out. Correct. Yeah. So that doesn't really change anything. That was what I thought the lineup would be in when I did the projections. Beyond that, on you know, it's a little bit difficult to look at these minutes and know exactly what's going to happen for Sacramento. So I do think it's basically just tournaments outside of Skal. Skal is cheap enough, and I'm pretty sure we'll start, especially on FanDuel. I'm pretty comfortable doing that, but wouldn't shock me to see a De'Aaron Fox isn't playing or Willie Cauley-Stein isn't playing. But again, they actually have a number of guys who will dress. Is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I'll say Zebo will dress, and Zebo playing wouldn't shock me. He's there. 8, 10, 11. I think they're dressing 12 guys. So minutes got to go somewhere, but again, they were very, very even-handed last game. You saw De'Aaron Fox take off and just crush in the first quarter. They kept him at like 18 minutes, I want to say, which he was very good in. But they basically played all the guys, and everyone played 15 to 22 minutes, with the exception of Bagley, who obviously went off and played 31 minutes. I can certainly see chasing that. The guy's really cheap. They also ran some absolutely hilarious lineups with 4 bigs, which is something to do with the fact they don't have that many guards. But you know, they actually had these 4 monster lineups out there where they had Zebo and Giles and Bagley and Willie out there at the same time. That's pretty hilarious that happens. And then, yeah, so it's difficult to project exactly what's going to happen with the Seattle Warriors for the purposes of this evening. Hard not to like Durant. Someone showed me a couple other projections people had that had him at 32 and like 31. I think that's ludicrous. He played only 20 minutes last game. I'd be surprised if he didn't play 24 with those guys out, and I don't know how you don't think he doesn't get 36, 40, 45 playing in Seattle with no Steph. So pretty big fan of that there. Obviously him. Obviously Clay. To a lesser extent, because just the nature of his game and inability to create his own shot. When you run a less efficient offense without Steph out there, he gets a boost, but not as much of a boost because, again, he's got to do... There are games where, you know, Klay Thompson takes more shots than he dribbles the ball. So you got to like the matchup, though, and think he'll be able to get those open shots, especially if the other team runs, you know, 4 7-footers out there at the same time. So, yeah. Klay Thompson, absolutely fine to play, but I feel less rock solid about it than I feel about Kevin Durant. Quinn Cook is the next guy I want to look at. I expect him to start at point guard. $4,300 is pretty appealing for the possibilities there. Drummond or Whiteside, I'm going to take Whiteside in both, but without a ton of confidence. But there's some chance Drummond doesn't play. It's probably not high for me. It's to the 5-10% range. And then... you'd have to think they don't go crazy again, especially with expecting Casey to get a little more whatever. But Casey, you know, talked him up, and he's got to get up for that game on Friday. He's got to get up for that game. I figure they start giving some bench minutes to, you know, they have 2 more bigs behind there. Last game they just ran, Drummond 34, Zaza 14. That was there. Who's better, Kawhi or KD? That's a long conversation for another night. They do both play tonight, but you can't pick Kawhi. Because Australia, man. You know, but that's basically it. Damian Jones will start again at center. He's still my 3rd favorite of the bigs there. I would still rank taking the bigs and GPPs there. Bell, then Looney, then Damian Jones. who picks up the minutes for the Warriors bigs. Those guys, and they'll run small a little bit more. Outside of that, I don't really want to play anyone on this team. The starters are going to play, the all-star starters, the 2 remaining guys, are going to play 20 to 25 minutes. You might get that out of Quinn Cook. You know, the bigs are all cheap, and Jordan Bell especially has GPP upside even if he plays 16, 18 minutes, but probably no one other than the players I've already mentioned plays 20 minutes. If you had to choose Diallo or Scal, who would it be? I would take Scal. Diallo has not looked that good this year. He's gotten appreciable minutes. Top of my head, 19 and 21 minutes for Cheick Diallo so far. I'm assuming you're talking about Cheick and not Hamidou, who is also in play and has also not scored in the preseason. Scored well. But I would play Scal. Bell starting for Destemond, so they're going to start Bell next to... Okay, so yeah, Jordan Bell seems like a pretty compelling play. We'll use this segue to looking into the prices on a couple guys. Yeah, he's $4,000 on FanDuel. So now, for me, Jordan Bell is probably a slightly better cash play than Scalabrine, but I still like Scalabrine a good bit more in tournaments there for what I expect to be somewhat better ownership. On DK, Bell is 51, Scal is 47. Glenn Robinson finds struggling at shooting guard. No, I don't want to play Glenn Robinson. You can, I mean, the minutes are all chopped up there too. What did he play, 15 or 16 last game? And you have Kennard there and just a pile of guys back there. I don't want to play Glenn if I don't have to. You like Josh Jackson and Ayton as a pairing? Sure. I think if you run Josh Jackson and Ayton, you want to run it back with, I guess, that's Portland. You don't want to play anyone on Portland, I guess. So sure, play them. I think it is largely irrelevant. There's a very slight negative correlation. It's not like one is going to assist the other. So playing one doesn't make the other better. But I'm disconcerted with playing both of them as a theory. Drew Holiday, please. Again, there's obviously some consternation and debate on this. I'm going to take 20 seconds here and check a couple updates on a couple things. And so I'm just gonna take a minute and make sure that I'm not missing anything. I have about 100 Google alerts set up. Going forward, on days where there are this many games, I expect to have a co-host, either the estimable Engelman or Adam Scherer or someone else, so that I can occasionally do these such things. So yeah, Mitchell Robinson is out. Moutier will start. Lance Thomas will still start there. Alright, so going back to the premium chat, see if there's any questions there. The Cyborg Vince Carter? No. He played 10 minutes in the opener, maybe 16. Can you run through your top plays? Sure, we can talk about some. Again, I like Scalabrine. They really only have a dozen guys, and he played 12 minutes last night, and everyone else who can dress except for Zebo, who did not play DNP old, played more minutes than that. So especially on FanDuel where he's 3,500, I like that play. Jordan Bell, once he gets the start, and now you can possibly be looking at getting, 25 minutes out of Jordan Bell, is a very, very strong play at his price. So no expensive guards really is your question. Okay, let's take a look at that. I mean, I like plenty of cheap guards, and there's plenty of bigs who are expensive. I like Paul George. I like Kevin Durant. I like DeAndre Ayton. I like Karl Anthony Towns more than apparently other people like, and especially because I had his head-to-heads up, and somehow I toggled my notes over from Oklahoma City to Golden State, so that was kind of funny there. But I still think Karl Anthony Towns has an upside we haven't seen yet, and I don't know, how many games you think he's going to necessarily be bad. Are we sure Bell is starting? I will confirm that. It was reported, but I didn't see who said it. I didn't question it when I saw it. So it was probably somebody I thought I could trust. Usually I question, but let's see. Maybe someone was just guessing. No, I don't see confirmation of that, and I appreciate you questioning and not accepting just as wrote there. Yeah, so Scal we've talked about there. That makes some amount of sense for me. Quinn Cook, who again is the minimum on FanDuel at 3,500 and 4,300 on DK, makes some sense if you're looking at an incredibly cheap guy on either of those sites. You know, Giles is 3,900 on FanDuel, but I'd rather save $400, play Scal, and not deal with someone who played significantly yesterday. Jordan Bell's 4,000 on FanDuel. That's pretty exciting. Just going through guys. I like Kevin Knox a lot on FanDuel at 5,100. I think that's a strong play. Dennis Schroeder's 5,300 on FanDuel. That's obviously pretty exciting, or at least so for me. Ayton at 7,200 makes a lot of sense. Taking a minute and looking at some of the DK prices that I made notes on and jumped out at me. Scal again I mentioned at 47. Value center on FanDuel. Jan Mahinmi, probably. Jan Mahinmi or Damian Jones would be your choices. In a tournament, I would play Jan Mahinmi. Yeah, Jan Mahinmi or Nerlens Noel would be the guys I would try to play there. Questions coming in. Can you rank Trier, Dorsey, Bembry, Cook for DK? Dorsey and Cook are a little more cashy there. Trier and Bembry are a little more tournamenty with their production, but again, Bembry will be higher owned than Dorsey. So on DK for a tournament, I would probably run. They all end up being really close because the guys I like slightly more are going to be slightly higher owned, as are the guys with higher upside. I think I would probably run Dorsey, Trier, Cook, Bembry, but all very, very close. Will projections be updated with the latest news on starts and sits? No, I can only do 12 or 13 things at the same time at most by myself. Mason, I don't hate, you're talking about Frank Mason III, I assume, because Mason Plumlee is not playing against an NBA team tonight. I think Marcus Hall at 6K is a fine tournament play. I have no issue with that at all. Projections are slamming Cook. How much do you actually like him? I don't quite understand what you mean projections are slamming Cook. I'm guessing you mean someone else's projections or your projections. I can't imagine why they wouldn't like him. I presume he starts. There's some consternation before that. I wouldn't have been surprised if Jonas Jerebko started instead of Jordan Bell there. So it's going to be interesting to see how that works out. If someone can give me an actual tweet from a reputable source and drop it in the Slack, I'll lower down to 7 minutes there. Tim Hardaway Jr. I think is a great tournament play. Someone from that game who people don't expect is going to be amazing. I think Knox is where I would rather go, where he's like 5,100 on FanDuel, but Knox and Tim Hardaway Jr., some of those guys are going to be good against the Pelicans. Again, in that game, you're just really wondering about minutes on both sides of the ball. Another thing to bring up, by the way, somebody said, I can see Anthony Davis playing 32 minutes. He's not going to play 32 minutes if the Pelicans are beating the Knicks by 29 at the end of the third quarter. Something else I want to point out there. Oh, your projections put Cook in basically every lineup is what you meant by slamming. Slamming into every lineup. It's more of a cashy play. You don't tend to get Quinn Cook monster game, but we got a few last year. There was the while, Steph played, whatever it was, 58 games last year. Quinn Cook played a lot, and there were a number of 35-point Quinn Cook games. Now, they're going to share around those minutes a lot because it's the preseason, so he's more of a cash play to me. He's not an every tournament play. Best shooting guard options other than Clay on FanDuel. Dwayne Wade is 3,900. 3,900, has some appeal to me. I think you can certainly looking at that. I'll start at the top and go down here. Drew at 8,300. I don't want to spend money on shooting guard tonight. Clay, of course, we've mentioned at 6,700. That obviously makes quite a bit of sense. Other guys here. I don't want to do Buddy on the back-to-back. Dorsey at 4,800 makes sense. Not during Turner with the situation there. Not doing Bellinelli with the situation there. No Kennard for me. Gary Trent Jr. maybe gets his 20 minutes again, but I would rather play Dwayne Wade, who I have projected for about 20 minutes and is $100 left and is a better basketball player even at this point than Trent Jr. You could each one more in a tournament, 3,600. Certainly, that's a little bit appealing. And Josh Okogie is 3,500. That's pretty nice in a tournament, the absolute minimum. That's almost better than Dwayne Wade. I think he's picking up his 20 minutes tonight. That's really close. Alonzo Trier is 3,500. Hard not to think that he's going to do something there. So yeah, that's about where I come down there. But plenty of pretty decent options there, to be honest. Paul George over 20 minutes. Yes, I'll take the over on 20. Not much, but I'll take the over. I'll go 23-24. Tim Hardaway, love him in tournaments. We did that. Is Sato playable? Not to me. If they're giving minutes to the starters, and he's going to fall behind a couple other guys in that, I just don't think I think he can do better. I like Knox just because he let people down last game, but his upside has been people are repeating me. No problem. Trier or Bembry on DK? That's going to be close. The Bembry news is a day older. I think Bembry is safer. I probably pay Bembry in both. I think he's a little safer. I think the upside is similar as we've seen. And I think the ownership is a little bit lower. So I'd probably just straight out play Bembry there a little more often. If you have questions in the premium chat, I'm trying to defer to you guys first. Is AD a must play? Not to me. Slate's big enough. AD is not a must play. I wouldn't repeat the opinions of someone I didn't respect, and someone in the premium chat was pointing out the usage last year and asked me why I didn't think that they were going to ramp immediately up here. Do I think that's possible? Yeah, I think it's absolutely possible that they ramp up the minutes significantly with only basically 2 preseason games left. But I think it's also possible that they keep them low and that, AD never gets that kind of kick in this preseason, or only goes up to 24. Point guard at name Trae Young and FanDuel. I like him. Thoughts on Drummond? I think I'm more inclined to play other centers because there is a non-zero chance he sits just because Blake's at the last game. I do think he plays. There is all the ceiling in the world there, but slow game. Could possibly sit. Will be popular. I would rather, fire a bullet at Karl Anthony Towns finally getting there. But yeah, Trae Young is a good player on that price on that site. Paul George or AD, if they were the same price, I'll take Anthony Davis. Cantor, yeah, Cantor I'm a huge fan of, and obviously showed he can, eat worlds in the last game. And they decided to play them into the third quarter last game. You have to think they decide to do that again. So certainly no issue with Enes Kanter there whatsoever. 2.5 minutes. Wizards guards. Yeah, I think I would play Beal over Wall at their prices, but they're both in the, if I was making a pile of lineups I could throw at, I think they play 21, 22, 23 minutes. That makes it hard to fit them in there with all the value guards we have and all the studs, but you're going to get John Wall at 3% owned, 3.25% owned, somewhere around there. So, no Knox in Fantasy Cruncher. What the fuck? Couldn't tell you. Or go way down to Lynn. Sure. I watched a video from yesterday just now where Gentry said they should go up a little bit, and he raised his eyebrows and laughed. So whatever that means. I would say for Anthony Davis, he's going to play. There is a 30% chance his minutes remain in the teens, about a 30-35% chance his minutes go 20 to 24, maybe a 20-25% chance his minutes go to 26, 28, and a very small chance he randomly plays 30 minutes. That would surprise me. And I do think it's relevant to point out they are playing the Knicks, who they should whomp pretty goddamn solidly. So why are you going to play him in the fourth quarter? Top 3 shooting guard cash plays on FanDuel. Really struggling at shooting guard. Okay, we're almost out of time, but Klay Thompson and Dwayne Wade at his price, and Alonzo Trier is the minimum, and a lot of time at shooting guard on FanDuel on this show. I feel like we've been through this. Justin Jackson or Justice Winslow, same price. In those matchups, I would play Justin Jackson. Should you go to Scal over Bembry and Dorsey in a lineup is fine, or should you go to Scal over one of them? I don't mind Bembry and Dorsey. I would go to Scal. I like Scal. Scal can have giant games. We have to think he's the one guy whose minutes are secured tonight, and they just don't have a lot of dudes. So I slightly prefer Scal to either of the wings on Atlanta in tournaments. Gasol or Whiteside is Whiteside for me. Like, don't get me wrong, Marc Gasol is cute in tournaments, but you are, you know, pivoting off of the expected play. So yeah, I think that's how I would read that situation. We're coming down to it, and then we'll do Jaren Jackson Jr. in tournaments, certainly. Justin Hasluck balls, yeah, he's been absolutely terrible. But you got to like this matchup, and again, there's just a minutes issue there, and he didn't play much last night. He played like 19 minutes. That portends well for him. Bembry or Trier or McGriddle Cash. It's probably Magruder. In Cash, I would play Bembry out of those three. That's funny, though. Especially when you have no, because of the fact that Taurean Prince isn't there. I think that's a slightly safer play. So let's look at some ownerships, because we should be there now, right? There we are. It is 7 o'clock Eastern. We got there. Who's the buy low small forward in Cash? And I'll stay and I'll handle a couple questions, because again, I'm trying to remember how many actual 7 p.m. games there were. But there's obviously a late swap on DK where more of you were playing than anywhere else. So I will continue to lineups locked. So FanDuel, you're out of luck for the moment. DK though, if people keep sending questions in either channel, I'll listen. Cantor or Ayton? I think Ayton is the cash play and Cantor is the tournament play there. Feel pretty good about that. Dorsey or Bembry? Did you answer that already? It ends up being really close between those guys. I think I probably play Bembry in tournaments and Dorsey in cash, but Bembry is going to be a little higher owned, but Dorsey is a little safer, so it ends up being very close between the two of them. I don't have a strong take on it, I'll put it that way. Looking at, let's see if I can actually get into DraftKings. Okay, there we go. The $75,000 pull-up jumper. Let's go ahead and look at some ownerships real quick for the 7 p.m. game. Or games. I'm trying to remember if there's one or two. But here it is, loading it up now. Hassan Whiteside, 30%, which on a slate of this size is pretty significant. Whiteside, 30%. Kellyo, 15%. Magruder, 13%. Dragic, 10%. It's a little surprising for me. Kelly Oubre got up to 10%. Winslow, 9%. Wade, 6%. Again, this is DraftKings, of course. Wall, 4%. Beal, 3%. Duncan Robinson, 2.26. Cantor is my FanDuel center in all lineups. I'm fine with that. He's like 6,100. The game has all the pace up the yazoo. Like, you have potential foul issues. Your rebounding upside, which fuels a lot of Cantor's production, is limited when you have Anthony Davis out there with you a lot. Like, it's not anywhere near the spot of going against Brooklyn was in the last game for Cantor. And Cantor does get to play Brooklyn again, so, you know, keep that in mind. Yeah, I'm not value center on FanDuel. I think Jan Mahinmi ended up being my favorite over Damian Jones. Whiteside 42% on FanDuel. Yeah, and at that point, I wouldn't want him in my tournament lineup. Well, he may turn out great, and there's no reason to think he won't be great. And I like him. I think I projected him for 27 minutes, 38 fantasy points. Hard not to like Hassan Whiteside, but 42%. There's other centers on the slate who can go, and Drummond is going to be 25 or something. So now you're talking about you can get Towns at 8%, or you can get a lot of other guys. You know, so I would look at some of the other centers just as tournament plays at that point. But there's absolutely nothing wrong with playing Hassan Whiteside and anything to me. You played Jeremy Lin on FanDuel. I don't hate that. You know, we can certainly hope the minutes come up. They're going to run more multiple guard lineups, and you'll see, you know, Bembry and Dorsey sliding down to even the 3 for little bits there. So that's going to, you know, provide some extra time at the 2 for Lin, and he's going to get some time next to Dorsey, which is good because, I do expect more time. I think you may get 20, 21 minutes out of Lin tonight instead of 18, and playing next to Trae Young gives you sort of an additional assist upside there, so I'm not fine with that. No late swap during preseason FanDuel. That's correct. No late swap during any season on FanDuel. FanDuel released their plans today. They will, in the regular season, be basically doing, for every slate, drop your lowest score. So there are, and I'm not going to do the whole thing now because I have probably a half hour to 45 minutes to talk about this. But there are, three things there. One is no swaps. The second is late swap. And the third one is drop the lowest score. And they all have serious problems. So, I will discuss at length the particular problems with this proposal. But yes, you now have to play a minimum, you should play a minimum price player on every slate you ever build on FanDuel. And I've heard several people try to challenge this today, and you're wrong. I'm sorry, you're just wrong. You will, between 85 and 90% of slates, I think it's a safe number, I have research on this somewhere, but between 85 and 90% of slates, you are going to have a guy who is worthless. Why would you ever not have a minimum price dude? Or minimum price plus 100, or like, I guess not 3,500 on FanDuel, but 3,800, 400. Like, if all they have removed the ability to build a lineup where everyone costs 5K to 8K. Don't even bother. It's mathematically asinine. I'm sure one will win someday, and you can turn around and go, look, it won one day, but it will never, ever, ever be the correct play to not have a guy who is at the minimum or incredibly close to it, because your worst player has almost no chance. Like, if you have, if your projections say nobody from 3,500 to 3,900 projects higher than 12 fantasy points, and I got a guy at 4,000 who I project for 20, okay, maybe. But the vast majority of the time, you're just going to punt the living shit out of it. Interesting tidbit from Pop. Spurs sports science staff has advised ramping up veterans' minutes as preseason progresses, so he's going to. Well, that's interesting. I hadn't seen that one. It's apparently from 4 minutes ago. Yeah, again, okay. You'd still have to really want it in that game. I'm going to, one of the Spurs value guys might get 20. Maybe Aldridge or DeRozan gets 30 or something like that. Maybe DeJounte Murray gets 25. But I would not feel too bad if I did not have any Spurs at the moment. Tim Hardaway Jr. thoughts? Love it. He gets to go out there and shoot up the world. Now, I think Drew Holiday may step on his dick a couple times, so... I'm not like windmill slamming him, but there were lots of very strong tournament plays today, and one of them would certainly have been Tim Hardaway Jr., who you're going to get at, I don't know, he was on that ownership list, but probably 8%. Mommy Ange L triple exclamation point. Someone is typing at me in ASCII or something at this point. Eddie 5.4 DK. I'm not watching the show driving. Who would it be? Bell, Bagley, please, thanks. Noel, Giles. Those guys are in those range. I have Quinn Cook already. Yeah, I think I played Bell there. Am I okay with 3 Heat in a lineup? I mean, if I have 3 Heat in a lineup, I'm just trying to think of the Heat and their various prices and how much that bothers me. I mean, if you have 3 Heat and a Wizard, I think it can work out. But, I mean, if you have Whiteside, like, I guess you're fine. If you have, like, Whiteside, Wade, Winslow, you're not spending that much money. So it really depends who they are. If you were, spending up, I'd probably not think it's ideal. Do you think Robinson being out is a minutes boost for Kanter? I wouldn't think so. And, again, he apparently really doesn't need one. He's getting plenty of time. But, Robinson played 10 minutes before he went out the last game, so that's sort of already factored into what Kanter's been doing in his price. And then I think they will just distribute those minutes likely to someone else. But it's not obviously bad for his minutes, but more likely than not, it's almost irrelevant. Magruder, Winslow, and Whiteside is fine. I'd like to find a way to get a Wizard in there going against them, Markieff Morris or something like that. But, yeah, I think playing those 3 guys are 5. They're all priced very well for what we can expect out of them. Some other questions. KD or PG-13 on DK in a GPP? I mean, that's really close. I have Kevin Durant projected for, I think, 4 or 6 more fantasy points. I guess I may as well just look at this point. So sure, let's load these up. I have Kevin Durant for, I have a feeling he got a touch over 40, if memory serves. Which seems like 24 minutes, 40.1 fantasy points is what I got kicked out. And I feel pretty good about that. Paul George I have at 26 minutes and 38.2 fantasy points. And I do think Paul George will be a bit lower owned. It's going to be interesting to see the ownership on both those guys. But I expect Durant to be a fair bit more. So I'd probably be a little more inclined to play Paul George. But I'd really like to play them both. Getting back to so many windows. I cannot wait for a co-host, because especially with this many games and this many news sites and everything else. PG or Cat, please answer here. I have to say I prefer Paul George there. I mean, I'm going to like Karl Anthony Towns in tournaments every day until he randomly blows up, and then probably not again, but he's going to have a stupid at some point. He's just better than he has played. So unless you think that at the tender age of 21, Karl Anthony Towns forgot how to play basketball, I'm going to continue to have some interest in him. Now, it's not him in a vacuum. Obviously, it depends. You know, Whiteside, when he's playing well in a decent matchup, you know, commands attention. Drummond's doing stuff. Kanter isn't in the worst spot ever. Some of the value centers are good, so you shouldn't treat it just like that. But I like Paul George a little better than Karl Anthony Towns, either tournaments or cash, to be honest. Yeah, and that's where it is. I like a play of Towns still, but I like a play of Paul George a good bit more. Could someone type to got him in chat that, please? Thoughts on Tyler Ulis on DK? I think he plays 12 minutes, 14 minutes. I think he played 10 in the last game. Obviously, having no Steph maybe kicks that up. Maybe you get like 16, but there's lots of great value tonight. You know, let's say you get 18 minutes of Tyler Ulis. I would have no interest at minimum price. So, favorite Phoenix point guard? I'll take a Kobo, but again, not a fan of any of the Phoenix point guards. One of them could get there, but there's 4. Probably won't be Melton. Didn't play the first game, got 11 minutes off the bench, second one. Okay. Could be Shaq Harrison. He started 2 games, got 24 minutes in both of them. Okay, but now Cannon is back in the rotation. I don't know. I just really don't want one, but I'd say a Kobo. Will I be behind a paywall once the season starts? To my knowledge, the answer to that question is going to be no. And again, some of the subscribers are a bit up in arms about that. Every time I step outside the house, there's like a crowd of 500 people with pitchforks and torches waving signs and shit. But at present, for a couple reasons, one of which is logistical, and the other one is because of the... basically, whenever you take anything that you consider to be of value and make it free versus charge for it, you are making a long-term instead of a short-term investment. So in theory, since many hundreds of people watch me this way, and many hundreds fewer people would watch me if I was behind the paywall, you are attempting to appeal, get people to look at all your stuff, look at me, go to the site, and sign up that way. And that works to a certain extent. A lot of people wanted the preseason to be behind the paywall, because, again, there aren't that many people that do it, and I've had a lot of success in the past, so I understand that. But we've had a not insignificant number of people sign up in response to seeing the shows over the last couple weeks. So that's how it comes down to, and again, this is, if you're a member of the premium Slack chat at Osmo.com, you would, you know this without me having to say it. But that's always a bit of a back and forth and a debate. And again, I try to look on the rosy side of it. My plan is to try to find other things I can do to make sure that those people feel value, and do the best I can to make that happen. So that's how we're going to handle that. Your Periscope crash, did you answer this question? Elf, Trey, or Teague in cash? I would have played Trey Young in cash, which is a little scary to say about someone in, you know, their 3rd game ever. Catter, Paul George. Oh my god, someone couldn't have typed an answer for him? Typing it in there for you. I really don't want to play LMA or DDR. Look, I get what you're... let me think about it again. They told Pop that veterans should play more, and so he's going to do it. Okay, so I'm Greg Popovich. I wish, but I'm Greg Popovich, and I want to play my veterans more. How much time am I actually getting out of these guys? I'm not playing DeRozan unless his price is significantly cheap somewhere. I stand by, and I've been right so far. Guys don't go into San Antonio and all of a sudden play really good basketball and contribute. Even if, and again, Pop said some things that made me doubt this conviction a little bit, where he's like, yeah, I'm not going to try to turn DeRozan into a system player. I know who he is. I'm going to let him play his game. He's an all-star. Great, that's what you want to hear. But if everyone else is playing the system, it still has an effect on him. Like, you honestly think these guys are going to run this beautiful tri-weave passing pattern and kick it out to DeRozan, and then he's just going to ISO a guy and shoot it again and again? Like, that's Just simply not what the team is designed to do. Plus the pace is down, plus the minutes will be down versus last year. Plus, so again, I'm just not a DeRozan fan this year. Could he go out tonight and play 26 minutes and score 31 or 32? Sure. But like that's what I think your upside is from him. So like I really don't want to play DeRozan. I would rather play Aldridge, who can double for you, who I still expect to be the lead dog on this team. So yeah. One more thing before you fucking crash. 5.4 DKU Till. Bell, Bagley, Giles, Noel, all there. This guy needs typewritten answers, and I will facilitate. McGruber, 36% in cash. That's weird. He said he'd run them more tonight, and then the eyebrow raise was for resting them in the last 2 games. Okay. Someone's guess is the Pelicans play 28 minutes tonight and then sit the next 2. Really? You think they're going to sit the next 2? Their last game is on the 11th. The game before that is on the 10th, I think. Their first regular season game is the 17th. Like, the 28 tonight, again, I think is possible, but I will take the under on that pretty significantly. But you think they're then going to rest them for 12 days? No, they're not going to, like, rest the veterans on the Pelicans for 12 days. Maybe they'll sit them like... Don't the Pelicans end with a back-to-back? There's so many schedules I've been looking at, I could be getting this confused. But let me look at the Pelicans. I think the Pelicans end with, like, a back-to-back next Wednesday and Thursday or something. But let me look this up so I'm not talking out of my ass. Yes. Oh, my God, I actually got it right. Actually, I think that's kind of pathetic now that I think about it. But yes, next Wednesday and Thursday, the Pelicans have their last 2 preseason games. If they don't play again after tonight, they open on the 17th. Today is the 5th. You think they're not going to play for 12 days? I don't think that's likely. I think it's incredibly likely, because they end on a back-to-back, that they play up tonight, play one full speed game either next Wednesday or Thursday, and sit the fuck out of the other one and let the kids play that. That, to me, is an incredibly logical presupposition. I think that's very possible. Can you help with needing 2 Trier, Tyus, Dorsey, and Mario? For me, it would probably be Trier and Dorsey, although they'll also be the cashiest, so depending on whether or not you're trying to be a little sexy there, probably then Mario over Tyus for me because of the matchup. You're so pissed at FanDuel, your edit got messed up, some bad luck this season. Yeah, there's nothing worse than when your process screws. 2 fouls on Rodney, shaking my head. Okay, I didn't really like him as much as other people did anyway, but that's lucky. Good thing Utah's not on the main slate. Rudy late scratched. Interesting. Hopefully not with anything serious. It's the preseason. They don't care. Yeah, we will see. I think you will see starters on that team get 25-plus minutes tonight, but I don't think it's all of them. I think Mirotic probably starts, but he's coming off injury. I don't think he gets it. I don't think they're going to take Anthony Davis and go 15, 17, 27. Maybe they will. You could certainly play it. But Elfrid, yeah, I'll give you north of 25 for Elfrid Payton tonight. I think that's fine. If Etuan Moore gets the start, sure. Drew, about that number. Maybe get 27 out of Drew, 28. But I still think you're all ignoring the fact that they have the Knicks and are going to beat stick them, and that reduces by some chance the fact that they might run the entire thing. Reggie Bullock smash game with some Pistons likely resting. I don't know if Reggie Bullock is really a smash game kind of guy. I can't do it. Got time to chat about the new FanDuel change? I'm going to do an entirely separate show on that. I may do it live. I may pre-record it. I got to think about it. But I want to write down some notes because there are a lot of factors, and I've seen 3 other reviews today, and everyone either said nothing or completely obvious things or completely wrong things. Just much like the late swap thing. Again, I relinked it earlier today. I put out a video that was 10 or 12 minutes talking about late swap, I think, back when there was a giant late swap debate on Jimmy Butler scratch night almost a year ago. It was October of last year. And Jesus Christ, were a lot of people talking, and, there's an old saying, those who speak don't know, and those who don't know speak, and boy. Yeah, there's a little bit of nuance into it, but I will probably just do a private video, record it, release it. I think. Maybe later tonight. I don't know, I'm pretty tired. It's a long day. I get, the slate this size was like 6-7 hours for me, and then my day job is like 8 hours for me, and I started pretty early and I'm pretty tired. So you had 60% Wade in your FanDuel build. Man, that's disappointing. I think he has a big game. He's shooting so much. Yeah, you take Magruder out of there, Wade's going to get pretty interesting. Do you think they'd consider going back to the regular FanDuel format if people hate it enough? I'd be shocked. Next year, maybe. But this year, I would require a phenomenal force of no. And it's not wholly bad. It is somewhat of a patch solution to one of the problems. You're going to get me talking about it. I don't want to do the whole thing. But, you know, one of the problems is people get a 0 and they shit themselves. And this doesn't help them as much as someone might think it does. But it does band-aid that problem a little bit. But it comes at a price. $5,300 DK guard spot. Who would you play? Someone said Bell. Bell's 5,100, but he's not a guard. Or if he's a guard on FanDuel, they really need to work on some of their things. I will take a look at that and find guys who have not yet started their game and are eligible. Guard, 5,300 on DraftKings. I have a feeling you're going to be Dorsey or Bembreed or something, but I am looking it up. I'm full service. I am here for you. I don't want to play 5,100 for D-Rose. Tournament Felton is kind of interesting. Always sort of underrated as a fantasy scorer. I think it's either Bembry. Guys I wouldn't hate playing in that spot. Bembry. You could make an argument for Frank Mason III. You make an argument for Tyus Jones, but for me, probably Bembry, Dorsey. Yeah, Bembry or Dorsey, and I find those two really very close to interchangeable. Bembry's a little bit better, but a little bit less consistent, but going to be higher owned. Sticky. Questions? 4 Warriors, too many. Clay, Durant, Bell, Cook? No. Bell and Cook are so cheap that... So, assuming it is Clay, Durant, Bell, and Cook, no, doesn't really bother me. I would try to run it back if you could. Get Scal in there. Get someone to kick yourself some upside on the other side, but I think that makes plenty of sense. FYI, chat, Heat played their starters 28 minutes Game 3 last year. I guessed the same thing tonight. Eric Spoelstra preseason is GOAT. Spo regular season is ass. Dude plays more guys in the regular season than the preseason. Last year, that happened. The year before... it didn't, and last year they were missing one of their guys, so I think that's slightly overstated, but still a good note, and please continue digging. Bembry is fine, yes. I think you were Brembry, which is kind of funny, but Bembry or Dorsey is where I would look there. Stanley Johnson, you know, I like less inherently at price, and even just raw points less than both Dorsey and Bembry. The matchup is pretty dreadful there, but you know, if you have no Blake and potentially other guys resting, there's some upside there. People screamed for late swap all season, nothing changed and still hasn't. FanDuel doesn't give a shit, they just don't want to have to give refunds. That's interesting. Yeah, it's I'll get into that whole thing another time. I am tired, so I'm going to step off, and we will do this voodoo that we do so well again tomorrow. I might even be doing something with football tomorrow. Stay tuned. And at some point the next day, I will bust out the video to which I just referred. So, have I covered the late games already? I've covered all the games already. But if you have any questions there, Sir Legend 7777, go ahead and drop them in the chat. I will keep it open and hang out at my desk for a little while. So everyone, best of luck in your contest tonight. Tweet me all your winnings. God bless. Go in peace.